Hello, my name is Brittany and I will be going over my research experience along with the things I have done in Japan. So, a little bit about myself is that I am a mechanical engineer. I am also a comparative cultural studies major with an emphasis in East Asia. I am also minoring in Chinese, Japanese, and mathematics. For my study abroad, I went to Fukuoka, Japan. At Kyushu University, furthered my research and I furthered my knowledge in mechanical engineering. I did take a couple of classes of mechanical engineering at Kyushu University. It's just that some of them did not transfer over right, and some of the credits too did not go over right. So yeah, that happened. Anyway, with this, I was able to experience a different kind of learning because Japan does. I found that Japan only teaches once a week for 90 minutes, and within that time frame, some professors are able to explain things well in English, while some others just lecture, and there's no time to get an example problem in, or sometimes there's no time to even ask questions. And then when I emailed some professors too, I find it that sometimes they don't reply at all. So I would have to go up in class. I would to go up before or after class, and I would have to pull them aside and say, "Hey, I have a question on this specific item. Can you further explain it real fast?" Or and so forth. I would try to get an explanation after that. Anyway, here is a picture of me at Kyushu University with the Kyushu University plaque. I am current. This is the time that this was taken was at the very beginning of the year when we first arrived. It was like the second or third day we were in Japan, and yeah, it was a hectic day. But it was really fun, and it was very fun exploring the campus along with what the future will look like for us. Me, Bryce, and Melissa, because I stuck with them a lot, and honestly, I don't think I would have been able to survive my study abroad without them. So I'm grateful for that. And off to the right, I have a picture of some of my friends who were in my speaking class. Right, this is my whole speaking class in general, and most of them I was friends with. We were very close, and we had a very good tight relationship because some of us were also in the same grammar class, and through that we were able to further ourselves in Japanese, and we were able to share our different experience we would have along with all the different experiences we would come across while in Japan. Specifically though, I had one of my friends, his name is Ujel. He was also a mechanical engineering student. He was actually an incoming master student, and he was here for a semester early to get caught up the um, on the language, along with being able to further his knowledge into what he will be studying. He was a great help to this, and again, I would not be able to. I probably wouldn't be able to survive some of my classes I took in Japan, and specifically for Japanese, if I wasn't for these people. So while in Japan, I did do some research before COVID-19 hit. I was in the precision machining department. So this department specifically focuses on chemical mechanical polishing, also known as CMP. I'll get into that a little bit later. And they also focused on optical measurement and evaluation. So this idea was that they had mirrors, and they would actually create a huge distance between each other, and they would place a metal in between some kind of distance, and they would use the mirrors to see if this metal was purified or if it was smooth. I thought that was really interesting, but for me, it wasn't the right track for me. Then another thing that they also concentrated on was confrontal coating and electrospray application for MEMS, low power laser processing with surface excitation. So what they would do is that they would experiment with the different coatings by applying an electrical current to the coating as it was being applied. So this was also interesting, but for my research in particular, I went to a master's student to get a better understanding of what I can do, and unfortunately, this wasn't available at that time. But I have been able to see into what students have done before in this field, And my specific topic was the chemical mechanical polishing (CMP). I was specifically studying the concentration of colloidal silica. And this picture on the right is one of the machines that the lab has. What it would do is that it would actually measure it would measure each tooth of the gear to see the different measurements, because sometimes when the gears are manufactured, not every tooth would be the same thing. Even if it's in the same mold, sometimes there are different impurities, and this machine is helping to detect some of that. So my research in general was in the room next to the lab. So I was lucky enough, and I didn't have to go to the warehouse to perform all my lab stuff. And in that warehouse too, they would actually use a huge scanner to measure the different impurities that each metal would have. But anyway, for my research, I changed the concentration of slurry from 5% to 20% on increments of 5. My main goal was to examine the slurry concentration and is to see if it has a significant impact on the CMP process. And the lab currently uses around 8% concentration. And the reason why I wanted to go into this specific research was because I read a whole bunch of papers, and I found that there has not been a lot of research in the lower concentrations of slurry, but there has been a lot of research in the high concentrations of slurry. For example, there's been 60 to 90% concentration. There's been 50 to 80% concentration, and those results are very valuable. But at the same time, for me in a lab, we do work with lower concentration slurry, and I find it that there's not a lot of research on it. So this is the reason why I went into this research in general. And the idea of this research too was to see if there was a better concentration to be used while polishing the metals. So in this picture displayed, this is the actual CMP polishing machine. As you can see up on the right, the green tape stuff is the load that we would apply to the metals, along with the extra load that would actually carry the metal. So with this, we were able to apply a constant force, and we were able to keep the slurry coming in at a specific rate, and we would even be able to control how fast the polishing machine would take. So with this, we were able to polish the different metals, and later on I would examine all those metals with this machine, the Lex microscope. And I had to use a whole bunch of different lenses in order to see the specific to see specific impurities, as seen in the image to the left. Yeah, that was the main idea of my research. And then the main metals that we used was titanium, aluminum, and zirconia. So I would have to cut 25 by 25 millimeters of these metals to create all these different specimens. And with that, we are able to examine further into materials with energy, along with robotics and human development. I was able to start some of this research, but unfortunately COVID-19 hit, and I had to come back to America. So when I came back to America, I started to research under Dr. Chacanel. I researched double-layer electric capacitors. Specifically, I had to research some of the materials that were used to create these electrical capacitors. And these electrical capacitors would also help create a longer-lasting battery. And I had to specifically read up a lot on composite materials and activated carbon. With these different materials, we were able to see if we can incorporate the electrical components into the shell, or the battery into the shell of the electrical component. For example, for a car, we were planning to see if we can play with the battery and if we can get that into the shell of the car instead of having a huge little space for it. And then we came in, if we get rid of that, we can add a whole bunch of other different functions for the car, which is very useful. Anyway, for my research specifically, I did a whole bunch of lab simulations, and I had to compare and contrast all these other different things. So linguistics in Japan, I find that Japanese in general has three different alphabets: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Kanji is based off Chinese, and I find it that Chinese nowadays, the Mandarin uses simplified kanji, simplified characters. Meanwhile, Japanese uses uh, traditional characters. I find that with these different characters, I was able to somehow match languages together, but with the whole bunch of there is a whole bunch of different grammar differences along with different characters that they use. For example, uh, the character wo in Chinese means I, but when it translates to Japanese, it means gamansuru, and then that's like to be patient or something. I found that interesting. And then while in Japan too, I realized that with some of the kanji I knew back when I was taking some Chinese classes, I was able to better understand some characters in Japanese, and it would click a little bit more when I saw some Chinese character, when I saw some kanji characters. But again, sometimes the meanings were completely different, but then sometimes they would just match up. For example, song in Japanese means to send, but okuru is also to send. The same type of send, like you're sending a letter, and it is the same kanji, just Japanese has furigana, meanwhile Chinese just has that one character. So my cultural experience in Japan is actually very interesting. This picture right now isn't really more of a culture experience. I went to an art exhibit and I was just having a fun time. And I thought, this is at Fukuoka Castle. It would be nice to show like what kind of events they have there too. So sometimes I was in a tea ceremony class, and our teacher would invite us to all these different tea ceremonies. And at these tea ceremonies, we went to different jindas, and then その神社で私は着物の人に会いました。そして着物の人は私と友達と一緒に着物を買いました。そして時々にも時々もおばあさんは今も着物と話します。So sometimes I did meet some people there, and we did go kimono shopping with some people, with one of the teachers here, and she was really nice. She was able to help us like learn how to understand like how to properly dress, how to properly fold our hands when we are entering a tea ceremony. We were also here for New Year's. We specifically all went to Tokyo, and I find it interesting at Tokyo. We went to a jinja, and at the Emperor's Jinja, and here we found a huge mouse. It was the year of the rat, so of course they had a whole bunch of different rat decorations. But here we were able to like experience like a more Shinto religion type of experience. We got to throw the coins, we got to bow, do a little prayer. And I found that very interesting because I think in America we celebrate New Year's, but probably not to this extent where they go all out. We have to go to like a traditional church or something. Like I feel there's nothing like that. Then since we were in Tokyo, we also went to Disneyland, and I find it interesting too because usually we don't see like these characters in kimonos. In traditional kimonos, like here's Mickey Mouse with bamboo behind him. Then on the other side, there's Minnie Mouse in a kimono with bamboo behind her. And then here's a picture of all of us all together. 東京にいるときに、他の NAU 生徒にも会いました。We also met another NAU student, and she actually got caught off, but I'm sorry. And that is the end of my presentation. 聞いてくれてありがとう。ごめん。日本語があんまり使いませんから、単語と文法もちょっと忘れちゃった。だからごめんなさい。でも聞いてくれてありがとうございました。And I hope that you enjoy the rest of this event.